Welcome, everyone, to the 79th Cannes Film Festival and Kering's Women in Motion Talks. Since 2015, this program has celebrated women in cinema both in front of and behind the camera. And this year, the Women in Motion honoree is one Miss Oscar-winning, Emmy Award-winning, the European Triple Crown winning, Julianne Moore. Congratulations. With all of those prizes in mind, you know, what does it mean to be saluted for this in particular, for this idea that your career mirrors the values of Women in Motion, that you have chosen roles that have uplifted women and created a rich portrayal of really of our gender on screen?
Thank you. I like our gender. I'm proud to be. I'm very proud to be a part of it. I mean, it's a thrill. It's such a tremendous honor and a thrill to be here and to be celebrated in this way. It's kind of, it's definitely surprising. I think when I always say that as an actor, you're part of a gig economy. Sure. You know, you're always kind of going from one job to the next job to the next job. So you're thinking about what's next always and not what's behind you, you know. And so when you realize that you're being celebrated or asked to speak about what's behind you, you turn around, you go like, wow, this is something that I've created or I've accumulated in my life. And so it's quite a, it's a nice point of reflection, and it's a wonderful honor.
Was there anything in particular that stood out when you did reflect? Was it a role that sprang to mind, or what? Yeah, what was it?
Oh my God, no. I mean, I was just talking to somebody about memory the other day. I did an interview with Don Cheadle, and we've been friends for 38 years. 38 years. And so we were kind of recollecting all of this stuff from our shared experience, and there were things where I had big holes. You know, he would remember things that I'd completely forgotten and vice versa. So I don't know, when I think about when I think about my experience, what I remember, honestly, what is the pleasure. Yeah. You know, that kept kind of moving me forward, that this idea that I really, really love what I did. You know, I love what I do. I always want to be in the doing of it. I'd rather be in the doing of it than even the talking about it, because you almost go into like a fugue state, I think, when you're working, where you're not quite sure what you're accessing. And so I like that feeling. I love the feeling of embodying people and telling these stories and feeling those feelings. And I think that that's what we want out of art. Yeah. You know, we want that feeling of emotion always.
When did you first have that feeling? Was it when you were just in school learning to be an actor? Actually, I should say it like this. What was the first time you got that feeling on a set?
Oh, well, I'm going to start with actually the first part of your question, which is when I first got that feeling. It was really when I started to read, when I learned to read. And it felt like it was such a point of feeling seen and of association that I got when I was in a book. And I felt like, wow, you know, it was sort of miraculous to feel seen in that way and to know that other people felt the same way, to the point that I really thought it was such an intimate thing to be writing a book. I'm like, how can people be exposing this about themselves, and how do they know this about me? And then you realize, of course, that it's really about the universality of human experience. And so when I found that I could take that feeling of reading a book and do it after school in the theater club, which is where, you know, that was, as a kid who was not sporty, I wasn't athletic, I didn't have, I couldn't, you know, I wasn't even good enough for the drill team or anything like that. You know, you ended up doing these plays, and it really was an extension of reading that brought me to it.
Yes.
Yeah.
So then, you know, you do these plays, you become a professional actor.
Yeah.
You come to Cannes for the first time, I think with An Ideal Husband.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
So a very famous play that you've translated to film.
Right.
You know, what is it like to then, you know, transform and translate that feeling to what you bring to the screen?
It's great. It's even better because, as everybody knows who works in film, it's a highly collaborative event. And I think that the experience of going from reading something, being in your head with something and feeling seen by an author or by a book, but taking that and going to like a physical place where there are other people who are collaborating with you, other actors, other storytellers, a director, a production designer, a costume designer, and it's literally an elaborate game of pretend. So everything that you do as a child that you absolutely adore, suddenly you're doing professionally with a bunch of other people who love to pretend too. But you're telling a story of what it means to be a human being, what it means to be alive. And it could be really, really funny, it could be real deeply sad, whatever it is that's deeply human. And so I found a way to take my childhood pastime, which was reading, and drag it into my adult life with other people who like to collaborate in that same way. So there really is nothing better. And then the thing about film is that you actually end up with an object. Yeah. You end up with this document that can last forever, which is kind of unbelievable, really.
Let's actually talk about one of those documents.
Yeah.
One of those things that did last forever. Because last year I was sitting here with Nicole Kidman. You succeed her this year, joining, I mean, in a pretty incredible, I think we, using the actual literal term of the word, a sorority. It's an incredible group of women,
right.
Many of whom you know, have worked with. We, of course, have Selma here as well.
That's right.
That have been these Women in Motion honorees.
Yeah.
But in 2003, you, Nicole, Meryl Streep, that was a really special moment in the industry, to have 3 women elevated all at once. What do you remember most about that?
Well, first of all, I loved that book. I mean, somebody gave me that book for my birthday, and I didn't even imagine that it was going to be a film. And when I was offered the role, I was beside myself. I couldn't believe it. It was so precise and so beautiful and so moving, incredibly moving. And then to be in the company of Meryl and Nicole, even though we never got to work together, that was the other thing. People were like, what was it like to be with these women? I'm like, we were in 3 separate movies. But when I talk about how we are moved by art and others' experiences, these are these 3 women who are linked by story and by history. And so the association we have to one another in that film is one that I think all women feel when they look at other women's, or we hope we feel at other women's lived experience, or something that you've been told, or a family member's experience that you have kind of, been touched by. So in that sense, it was an incredible representation of what it means to be in relationship to other women's stories.
Absolutely. And when we would see, throughout the award season, because like you said, you were not in the film together, but you did get a chance to spend time together afterwards. I know Meryl in particular is someone who's been very inspiring to you.
Everyone, right?
Yes, to all of
I mean, I think she's the gold. I know, she's the gold standard. I think, when I think about Meryl and I think about kind of what she brought to modern audiences, or to certainly to my generation and to many generations after me too, is that she was the first. I sort of grew up watching television and movies and seeing movie stars, and she was the first woman that I saw who appeared to be, I don't know, she was like touchable and untouchable at the same time. There's something very human about her, and something very modern. And yet here she was on the cover of Time magazine when I was, I think, 15 or 16 years old. Here was this actress. She was like the next big thing, and she was so precise in what she did. Like I said, so modern and so accessible, and yet glamorous and wonderful and brave all at the same time. And so I feel like she kind of lit a fire under everybody in terms of how we wanted to be, in terms of what we thought we could achieve in our work.
Sure. Then what was it then like to get to? Did you ever tell her that?
I don't know. I feel like, don't we always tell her that, Selma? Doesn't everybody always tell Meryl that kind of stuff?
I go speechless.
Yeah. I think I watch her sometimes go like, oh, well, oh, stop.
Yes.
She's so like, oh, whatever, but I think she's been remarkable in that she is so gracious about it, and she has been such a standard bearer, and I feel like I've burbled stuff like that at her a couple of times, many times.
The reason I bring that up and I bring
Yeah.
her up is because, you have definitely taken up that mantle then to follow. The commitment that you have made. Also, the commitment Nicole made, that
Yeah.
was a big part of Women in Motion, the commitment to work with female directors.
Right.
What has it been like to carry her banner forward?
Well, thank you. First of all, that's very nice. I don't know that I'm doing that, but I think that she definitely set an example that I would like to try to follow. But I think that what has been most interesting to me and what has developed more strongly as I've gotten older and been, I feel like, more in charge of my choices. Because initially, when you start out, you just do what comes your way. You don't really have a lot of choices. You're just like, great, I have a job, I'll do it. And then slowly, you gain a little more authority, and you start saying, well, this is what I want to do. And one of the things that I talk about endlessly, in a way that's probably boring to a lot of my friends, is point of view. What I'm looking for in a story is, where is the point of view? And I want it to be obvious, and I want my character's point of view to be represented. And I am also fine being in a story where it is not from my character's point of view. And I know where I am, and I know how I'm relating to maybe the main character or the director's kind of omniscience, right? Sure. I'm fine with that. But I want to be clear about whose story it is, how it's being told, and whether or not it's accurate. And I often find that there are places people kind of will skip that step. And I'm like, well, why does this character do that? And they'll be like, well, because she wants, she's the bad guy. And I said, well, why is she the bad guy? And they're like, well, because we need a villain in the thing. I said, but nobody's a villain and nobody's the bad guy, and everybody's always acting out of what they believe is true and right. We saw a film last night that I wanted to talk about. We saw Gentle Monster, and it's something that really sat with me this morning, where I started thinking about it, where it was so, it's a wonderful female filmmaker and wonderful actresses, and it was so firmly set in female point of view and what it means to live in a society where you are not the dominant culture, where you're being affected by things that you don't recognize. And it was told so subtly and so beautifully and so movingly, and it was so very female, and it was really, really exciting to watch. Because it wasn't didactic, it didn't feel, there was nothing harsh about it. There was just a realization that these women were living in worlds where they'd been kind of really affected by the patriarchy and by male decisions, So I was like, wow, it was a beautiful thing to see, and a wonderful thing to see in Cannes, where it's really the ultimate place to watch films, where you are so focused, where you can kind of see everything and you have no distractions. But yeah, point of view, that's a big deal.
And to your point about that, you don't have to be the protagonist
to
have your point of view actually represented in a story. More often than not, I mean, that is kind of the failing sometimes. Right. It says, oh, you are the wife or the girlfriend or this. That's fine. But you also want to have an actual rounded story and that depth of understanding.
Right, and it's also okay to be somebody who's defining a main character. I don't mind that either. So then I understand that I'm in relationship to that. But I want clarity around it. And I think for myself too, I'm just interested in stories where I feel like things are authentically represented. Oh, we were talking about names this morning. Sure. We're talking about names and how you can tell when someone was born by what they're named, and how some names go in and out of fashion, and what is a name that your grandmother might have had and your mother might have had, or and like that specificity in a screenplay, somebody knowing where somebody exists in time, what they relate to, what their name would be, all of that stuff really contributes to knowing who that character is.
Absolutely. Yeah. What has stood out to you in some of, as you say, now that you have more choice, what has stood out to you in some of the roles that you've taken recently?
What has stood out? What's interesting to me, I'm less and less interested in tragedy, I would say. And I think that particularly now, at a time when things are really rough globally, it's very difficult for me to invest in a story that I think is pretend, where I feel like the depth of the emotion, the measure of it doesn't measure up to what's happening in the world. And I don't feel like I want to engage in it. And there are times when I see things emotionally, when something is there for stakes. I don't like easy stakes. I don't like someone being murdered. I don't like, explosions and guns. I don't like histrionics. I don't like things that raise the stakes without real feeling underneath. I mean, it actually bothers me because I'm like, I can't, that's just like noise, that's like up here. I don't know how to play it. I don't want to watch it, So that's been interesting because things that I might have thought were interesting years ago because I hadn't attempted to do them are less interesting to me now.
When you look at something like you're making a new movie, or rather made a new movie with Jesse Eisenberg.
Yes.
You're going to get into the musical comedy
right.
genre again. What was it about that role and that opportunity?
God, what wasn't it about? I mean, it was really, I think that I can probably count on two hands the scripts that I've read in my career that have made me just like electrified. And this was one of them. Jesse Eisenberg and I had worked together on his first movie called When You Finish Saving the World. And he's a really assured, wonderful filmmaker. And he basically sent me this screenplay and said, I wrote something and I really hope you'll do it. And it's magnificent. And it's a comedy and there's definitely an elevated tone to it. But when you talk about things that matter, and it's really a story about a person who finds the world that she wants to commit to and finds a place where she feels valued and she finds a community that she can belong to. And it happens to be community theater. But that's what matters to people. So what was interesting is that like, I'm less interested in like, I don't know, an explosion happens and blah, blah, blah. This is a person who auditions for community theater and it really matters to her whether or not she gets this part. And the world, and in this little world, everybody values it and everybody's invested in it and the stakes for them are really high. So those are the kind of emotional stakes I understand. I understand like caring about like, your best friend's birthday party and does everybody come and have they RSVP'd and, is she gonna like what I got her? And, those human stakes, I'm very, very interested in those. And this one has it in leaps and bounds and it's joyful. Like I said, it's about the human experience. It's about the expression of feeling. It's funny. It's extreme, but it's within, it's imaginative in a way that I find really refreshing.
How does the experience of getting that script kind of fit into that evolution, as you say, of having more choice and having that idea of, what I've heard and what I've found is that a lot of people, when they kind of make a decision that they're going to work in a certain way and that they have certain values and things align,
right.
Things just start to funnel to you that are what you kind of desired to put out.
That's interesting. I wish I believed that. I feel like sometimes I do, sure. But I also feel like there's a period of saying like, no, I think that's like too dark or no, or, there might be a time of kind of reframing.
Yeah.
And I've never found that anything in my career has been linear at all. It's been so up and down and up and down. You're like, oh my God, I'm never gonna find anything interesting until suddenly you're like, oh, I really think that is interesting. You just don't know. And so much of what we do relies on creators and writers to kind of come our way with stuff. And I don't know, but I do think that you develop an ear for what you like. You're able to, I think it takes a lot of work. It takes a lot of reading and digging and watching and looking. And you start going, oh, that's what I would like to do.
No, that's true. I mean, how far into a script does it really usually take you to know if it's a yes or a no?
If it's a yes, it's usually immediate. If it's a maybe or a no, I'll go all the way to the end. That's the worst. When it's a no, I generally I can read the whole thing because I keep hoping it's going to get better. Mm-hmm. Right?
You're like, there's going to be something.
There's going to be something here. I know. That's right. You got to kiss a lot of frogs. That's right.
Well,
Yeah.
to that idea, you know, as you focus on finding those stories that speak to you and finding those ones with a strong point of view, you know, we are still statistically kind of we're in a bit of a backslide in terms of representation for women on screen and behind the camera. You know, we do make up 52% of the population, but right now women's roles fell from 41.3% in 2024 to 37.1 in 2025.
Yeah, right.
What does that indicate to you?
We were in a bubble of. I mean, I think that. I mean, this is a discussion that I've been having about our work and women's representation from the very beginning of my career. And I always say it's not endemic just to the film industry. It's global. I mean, there's not representation in C-suites. There's not representation in media. There's not representation in higher education. There's, you know, so there are lots of places where we don't have the representation that we deserve. So I feel like it's a bigger problem. And how do you change that? I don't know. I mean, it's like, you know, how does a mouse get through a wall one bite at a time? You know, you do it slowly, steadily, mindfully, making choices, speaking up, using your privilege, hiring more, talking about alliances, changing things for us, I think, on set. I feel like women are each other's greatest allies, and that's like the secret sauce. It's like we are the ones that have each other's backs. We are the ones that hire each other. We are the ones that write stories about ourselves. So all of that, and that actually goes back to point of view too. It's like, who's telling that story? Whose point of view is it? Is it a female point of view? You know, so that's what you hope for.
What does that look like for you in terms of the choices that you make? I know, for example, one thing, most of your team is made up of women.
Yeah, actually, my entire team, with the exception of my publicity team, are female, and I think it has to do with who, you know, who's drawn to whom. Like, why are we together? We have the same tastes. We have the same interests. We gravitate to all the same material. You know, so that's been something that just sort of happened magically.
Absolutely, it's one of those things that you don't necessarily do to make a statement or to make a point, but it does actually have a bearing on how your experience walking through the world is.
Yeah, you do it because your values align and your interests align. Actually, yeah.
When you look at just the innovations of your career, or, well, not of your career, but throughout your career, in terms of representation, seeing more people on set, what have you seen in terms of the arc of that?
I've seen incremental change. I mean, I have definitely seen change. I mean, I can remember being on a set not too long ago where the only women on the set were me and the third AC, this young woman. And it's when Hillary Clinton lost the election. And we were both devastated. And I said, look around the room. It's just you and me. We're the only ones here. I mean, that was what was shocking, and it was shocking to her too. And she was, you know, I think she was 24 or something. So I've definitely seen, I've certainly seen more gender representation in crews. That was really unusual when I was coming up to see any women on a film set, on a crew. So that has changed. There have been more female directors, more female writers. You know, in terms of actresses, they're my girls. Sure, they're always there. We're always together. I can remember, and some will remember this too, back in the day, like when I auditioned for something, I would call and talk to my agent or manager afterwards, and I'd say, well, is, you know, so-and-so going to get it? Is she going to get it? And I said, I feel like she's going to. And she'd go, well, how do you know? I said, because I sit next to her every time. We're always there. I know it's going to be her or me, and I know you know the other women's strengths. Yeah. You know, you're like, well, she's going to be the better choice. She's going to be the one that, you know. And so like I said, there's an incredible alliance among actresses and a sense of admiration for one another's work and strength.
And not a competition either. That's the thing. You sit next to someone for decades doing, well, you haven't auditioned in a while, but you sit next to someone all of those days. It is not that you are bothered necessarily that she got the role. It's that you know people's strengths.
You know people's strengths. Yeah, you know when they'll serve the material better than you. You also know if you have a really strong feeling about something that you might serve the material better. You know, you kind of you understand that everybody's got their everybody has their vibe.
And it gives you opportunity to know when to work with them in the future because you know what would be a great opportunity to collaborate with someone. I want to go back really quick to what you were saying about the kind of larger problem we have with representation. You told a story recently. You're on a plane with your daughter, and she noticed that there were not that many travelers of women in the business class section. What was it like to see her see that?
Oh, well, I'll refine the story
Sure,
a little bit. She was going somewhere, I can't remember where it was, and she got bumped up. And so she got bumped up into business class, and she went to an all-girls high school, and also in college felt like she had a really strong, female friend group, and it felt very balanced to her, gender-wise, her whole group. And so she went somewhere, and she got bumped up, and she went, "Mom, it was all men." And I said, "Welcome to my world." But she was shocked because she'd never been in a place where there wasn't 50-50 representation. Well, like 100% in her high school, and then in college where they were all really strong students and they were equally represented. And so here she was in the working world, and suddenly she was like, "Well, where are the women? Where are the 50% of the women that I'm used to seeing everywhere I go?" And so suddenly she sees this big drop off at the age of whatever it was, 23. Yeah. So I said, "Yeah, it's surprising, isn't it?" And I think that as these young women have reached adulthood, that is something that they are reckoning with, that with all of the education that we were able to give them and all of the support, I think they finally understand what it was that we wanted for them and what that we were trying to prepare them for. You don't see it until you see it,
What advice did you give her about the idea of navigating it? Because obviously you have done it in a different industry, but figuring out how to still accomplish the things that you want to accomplish, knowing that we are less represented.
What advice did I give her? I give my children the same advice. My son, also, and my daughter, just in terms of the world that I really encourage. I said a work ethic is more important than anything else for a young person. I said whenever you see a young person with a great work ethic, an older person will be like, "Come with me, I have a job for you." And I said, and just do it, get it done, be prepared. I talk a lot about confidence. This idea that confidence is innate is sort of crazy. It's not. Confidence is something that you have when you have prepared yourself. So I'm like, prepare, be prepared, be educated, know what you're supposed to do, then you'll be confident walking into it, I can't, it's in terms of, I think that both of my children feel, I don't think that they feel they've lived in a patriarchal world in our family, So I think it's the way they see the world. I think they've been cultured in a way that hopefully will help them bring equality, gender equality forward.
Absolutely, and not specific to your children, but how do you look at the journey that you went on, the trajectory that you had, how you found your way to succeed? Wow, I do know words.
I think that I still can't believe I can make a living doing this. I cannot believe it. I have so much gratitude. I don't know. I just don't know. I feel like, once again, another thing that I say to my children too, and I think is so important in life, is to follow your interests. That being interested in something, brings you everywhere. Being interested in people, being interested in material, being interested in the world and in travel and in conversation and all of those things. If you do the things that you like doing and do them well, it leads you somewhere. And it kind of goes back to that thing about, going into the theater club and thinking, this is so much fun. I love this. I love doing it. It's like taking that. I think that the pleasure and the joy for me, help me withstand the times when I'm like, this is a drag, all of these auditions and, you know, the tough stuff. I think that I can't wait to go to work. You know, I'm always so excited to be there. It's such a privilege, and to find something that you care about, and to, like I said, to do those little pieces. To think of it that way, never think of it like, if I thought that I had to go from, you know, college to here, I'm like, how do you get to Cannes? I'm never gonna get to Cannes. You know, it didn't seem possible.
Yeah.
It didn't seem possible. But I think that, you know, like little steps. But it doesn't end either. It doesn't end. There is no there. There is no. People are always asking each other, because we want to be, it's assured by the fact that there's some narrative to life, that there's a beginning and you go like this and then you're gonna wrap it up at some point. It's just not that way. You know, life is like, I always say it's like this. You just kind of keep going and going and going, and then one day it'll end. We don't know when, and we hope it's not anytime soon for us or our loved ones or anybody, frankly. But it's just like, you just kind of keep doing and keep being interested and keep connecting with people and keep finding things to do.
I mean, I love to see the continued journey, the continued trajectory, and also the way so many things come full circle. I did want to ask real quick, you signed on as an executive producer last year of the now Oscar-winning documentary.
They won the Oscar.
live action short.
Yeah.
Two people exchanging
Two people
saliva.
exchanging saliva, yeah.
What was it about that experience of being able to support filmmakers that really stood out?
It was real. I wanted to be an ally. It was a short that I saw. They are really accomplished filmmakers. It's a very imaginative, arrestingly shot film with wonderful performances. And I just met them for a coffee and talked about it, and then just said how much I liked their work. And they were looking for people to kind of guide them. I think they asked Isabelle Huppert as well,
Yes.
who is also, you know, I'm a major fan. She's a friend of mine. I love her. And so we were just there to be allies. And it was so great. It was such a great experience just to be able to talk to them, do a little bit of press, just support it, get it out there, just to make people pay attention to it. I just loved the experience of, it was also like not something where it was, I don't know, it was just, I just did it because out of pleasure, out of interest and out of pleasure, and because I wanted to support them. And they won an Oscar. That was great.
And it's one of those, it's a pleasurable experience,
Yeah.
but it's also an example of the power that you have gained in this industry and wielding it with purpose.
Thank you. I think that, as we all know, you know, we're living in an attention economy now where everybody's like, lights are flashing and things are going off, and people are like, look over here, look over here, look over here. And so if you have the ability to help something find a place in the culture, to draw attention to it, you know, it's nice to be able, it's very nice to be able to do that.
To that idea of producing, I mentioned it to you backstage.
Yeah.
It is actually going to be the 15th anniversary of one film, Crazy Stupid Love. And you technically are having...
For those who celebrate.
For those who celebrate,
Yeah.
and you should. And you're having a pseudo reunion in a way with Emma. Emma Stone is producing that film that you worked on with Jesse Eisenberg.
Right.
What is it like to see where she has gotten to?
Yeah, she's just an incredible talent, and was like from the minute that I met her. I mean, she's so lovely and wonderful and gifted and alive on screen. And like I said, she was in Crazy Stupid Love, and she's been so, you know, in all of the films that she's on subsequent to that. And now she and her husband Dave have started this production company, Fruit Tree. They've produced Jesse's first movie, and I guess the second one
both.
too. Yeah, and then this one as well. So I think they're doing great work, and they have wonderful taste, and it's marvelous to have a creative relationship with someone I've known for so long.
I want to ask about that role in particular too, because it does speak to this really having a point of view. All of the characters, it's a great ensemble comedy, but I will always remember your performance in that film, and just, I don't know, just how I just truly, I just love it.
That's so nice.
but
In
what do
Crazy
you-
Stupid Love. Well, you know, there was this one line in Crazy Stupid Love that I loved so much. I told Dan Fogelman because it was so specific. And it was this, you know, her marriage is breaking up. And she says to him, you know, that time that I told you I was working late, I went to see Twilight, and it was so good. And she starts to cry. But what Dan manages to say in that line is, I'm so unhappy in my marriage that I went to see a romantic film. But then I realized it's a film about vampires and teenagers, and it's not for me. And it's like, and what I'm really missing is my own marriage. Yeah. So, but he does it in that one line, and it's funny, you know? So when you think about something like that that resonates with people emotionally, because it's moving and it's human, but it's specific. It's really, really specific about relationships and what people want. So even when people talk about something funny, like, you know, what's a funny line? I'm like, well, what does it mean? Like, why is it resonant? Why do you remember it forever?
Because it's really saying something so much deeper, like you
Yeah.
said, about the human experience.
Yeah.
And we just so appreciate you continuing to bring us these roles that examine those depths. You know, we can't give you enough awards, honors. The trophy case will just break. Actually, I will ask you one last question about awards.
Yeah.
Of course, winning the Oscar for Still Alice. What do you remember of that day?
You know what I remember? I remember somebody saying to me, and I wish I could remember who it was, well, you're going to win the Oscar tonight, or else it's going to be the biggest upset of all time. And I thought, I don't want to be the biggest upset of all time. You know, I was like, literally, I don't know who it was. It was also Eddie Murphy came over. That was pretty awesome. That was really awesome. But, you know, because we were in the front row,
Sure.
and he just came over and introduced himself, and my husband almost died because he's a huge Eddie Murphy fan. But it was like I don't know. It was I couldn't believe it. You know, I couldn't believe that it happened, and I feel so lucky. And
I still don't understand the upset.
the upset, well, because I had won everything, right? So he was like, he was basically saying that you're going to win tonight, but if you lose, it'll be the biggest upset. Because it was like, so if you lose, no. It was sort of like, betting on a horse. It's like,
But again, what a thing to say to
odds,
somebody.
like these are the odds. They'd been that way the whole season. So if I lost, my God, if you put money on, you know, whatever. So that was, yeah.
No, I'm glad you clarified.
Yeah,
because
'cause
it is a shocking thing for someone to
That's-
just throw that
That's
out
right.
to you.
I wish I could remember who said that.
Exactly.
Because I was like, oh no. Yeah. And I remember I was last too.
Yes.
It was that, you know, that thing, you don't know what the order's going to be. And I was sitting there, and then I was like, oh, I'm last. Oh.
And you have to sit through the whole ceremony with the anxiety.
Yeah.
And then you deliver a gorgeous speech.
Thank you.
And get to take that little guy home with
Yeah.
you. Well, we're excited to see what comes next. Obviously, Jessie and Tom Ford as well.
Yes, but I mean, it's very small. You know, lots of dresses though. I don't say much, but I wear a lot. Yeah.
Well, we look forward to what comes next, and we thank you for allowing us to celebrate what has come so far. Congratulations, Julianne, and thank you all so much for spending some of your festival experience with us.
Thank you so
Thank you.
much. Thanks for talking to me.